I had just wrapped up my Thursday afternoon lecture on economic theory when Lily strolled up to the lectern. She's stunning, not in a supermodel kind of way, but more like the kind of natural beauty you'd find on a country girl. She's the type who's always in jeans and cowboy boots. Today, though, she paired it with a light summer blouse that dipped just enough to show a hint of cleavage. Her hair was that perfect mix of light brown with blonde highlights. Honestly, if I weren't married, well, you get the idea. "Dr. Evans, I saw your wife today," she said. Her steel-gray eyes locked onto mine. "Where?" "At the mall." I asked. "No, my partner and I have a place up by the lake. She likes to sunbathe on the deck while I fish." "Do you like fishing, doctor?" "Not particularly." "But why do you think you saw my wife?" "Your vanity plate, Derision." "It caught my eye," she replied. That caught me off guard. I'd taken Emily's car in for servicing earlier, and she had been driving mine. "She has short blonde hair, right?" Lily asked. "Yes," I confirmed. "Where exactly did you see her?" "She showed up just as I was leaving this morning. She parked in the driveway next door to us and went into the house." "Does she fish?" "No," I said flatly. "Do you know who owns that property?" "Sure. Marcus Williams, the football player." "Are you two friends?" "No, not at all. He was a patient of hers a few months back. Emily's a nurse, and he was on her floor." I must have looked visibly shaken because Lily paused on her way out the door. She turned back and said, "Doctor, be careful. Marcus is about 6'3", maybe 235 pounds, and he plays middle linebacker for the local pro team. He's got a reputation for being mean. Last season, he got ejected from 2 games for unnecessary roughness." Two things hit me after that conversation. First, Anne, Lily's partner, was gay. That one took me by surprise. Partner, suntanning, yeah, okay, not a big deal. To each their own. The second thing was much harder to swallow. My wife of 6 years was cheating again. Before you start picturing me as one of those guys in some internet story who tolerates his wife's affairs while he sits at home playing babysitter, let me set the record straight, I'm nothing like that. I met Emily the year she graduated from nursing school. I had just earned my PhD in economics. Her dad was a big-shot heart surgeon who'd made a fortune over the years. When Emily introduced me, she told him I was a doctor, and let's just say he wasn't thrilled when he realized I wasn't the MD kind. He immediately insisted I sign a prenuptial agreement, convinced I was after their money. Both Emily and I signed without much fuss, and I shoved our copy into a drawer where it stayed for the next couple of years. Things were great at first. Emily got pregnant within the first year of our marriage, and we had a beautiful baby girl. No drama. Her dad, Dr. Blake, his vanity plate made that impossible to forget, helped us get a nice house. Everything seemed like it was falling into place perfectly. Then, after Emily stopped breastfeeding, she became self-conscious about how her 34B breasts looked. They'd lost their perkiness and pointed downward, which really bothered her. She struck up a deal with one of the plastic surgeons at her hospital and arranged for a breast augmentation. When I asked about the cost, she brushed it off. "Don't worry," she said. "I worked out a deal with the doctor." "What kind of deal?" I asked. "It's just something between medical professionals," was all she said. About a week after her surgery, I drove her to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. When the nurse called her name, I stood up to go with her, but the nurse stopped me. "Only Emily is allowed back," she said, glancing at my wife. They exchanged a knowing smile that made my stomach churn. What the hell was that about? I sat in the waiting area for what felt like forever. When Emily finally came out, she was grinning ear to ear, and the doctor followed her out with a similar expression. But when his eyes met mine, his grin faltered. He looked at me like he knew something I didn't. In the car, I noticed Emily's breath smelled like mouthwash. I asked her about it. When he took off the bra and bandages, he squeezed my breasts pretty hard, she explained. It surprised me and hurt a lot, and I threw up in his sink. That mouthwash is standard in the hospital, it's under every sink. I wanted to believe her, so I let it go. But when we got home, I ordered one of those DNA test kits just to be sure. I tested our baby girl, and she was mine. Still, over the next 6 months, I kept noticing that same mouthwash on her breath, more times than I wanted to admit. Whenever I asked about the mouthwash, her answer was always the same, something about having spaghetti or tacos for lunch. And I bought it. I mean, it made sense that she wouldn't want bad breath while working with patients, right? During my lunch breaks, I'd occasionally swing by the hospital parking lot, and her car was always there. Nothing seemed out of place. About 5 months later, during dinner, Emily made a comment that caught me off guard. "I guess Dr. Bell, the plastic surgeon, is out of my life," she said casually. She explained that he had accepted a job at a clinic on the West Coast and had moved there with his wife and kids. Curious, I asked why she phrased it that way, out of her life. She brushed it off, saying it just meant that if she ever had an issue with her implants, she'd have to find a different surgeon. Sure, I thought. That's probably all it was. For the next year or so, things were steady. I did notice the faint smell of that same mouthwash on her breath a few more times, but what was I supposed to do? Go to divorce court complaining about mouthwash? It would have been ridiculous. If I wanted to enforce the prenup, I needed rock-solid evidence of an affair. Then came our daughter Ella's 3rd birthday. I picked her up that day to take her out for a celebration at McDonald's, her favorite place in the world. Emily was supposed to join us there later. When I arrived at the hospital to pick her up, I spotted her standing near the side entrance, deep in conversation with another man. He was standing way too close for comfort. I gave the car horn a quick honk, and Emily turned, startled to see me. She said something to the man, a guy who looked Asian, then hurried over to the car. When she got in, I asked, "Who was that?" "Oh, that's Feng," she said, sounding casual. "He's one of the students here. I gave him a poor grade on his bedside manner, and he's upset about it. Don't worry, he graduates in a month, and he'll be someone else's problem." We headed to the restaurant and had a nice little celebration. Ella was all smiles, and for a while, I let the incident go. Afterward, I dropped Emily back at the hospital, took Ella home to the nanny, and managed to get back to the university just in time for my afternoon classes. But the next morning, something nagged at me. I decided to call the hospital. That's when I learned they weren't a teaching hospital at all. Emily had lied. Still, it wasn't the concrete proof I needed. For the next year and a half, everything seemed great. Emily was always home when I got back from work, and though I'd occasionally catch that mouthwash scent, I dismissed it. I told myself it was from a chili cheese dog at lunch or something similar. A couple of months ago, Emily came home buzzing with excitement. A celebrity was on her floor at the hospital. Marcus, the Beast, Williams, a professional football player, was there undergoing some tests. She went on about how he'd been an All-American in college and an All-Pro for 3 years. I didn't follow football, so it didn't mean much to me at the time. Looking back, I should have paid more attention. This was the same Marcus Williams that Anne had mentioned, the guy who owned the house by the lake, the house Emily had visited that morning. When I got home that evening, I found Ella, now almost 5, sitting in front of the TV, glued to a cartoon movie. "Where's Mommy?" I asked. "She has a headache," Ella replied. "She's upstairs in your bedroom." That got me thinking. Thursdays were what Emily called her me days. She'd take the day off work, go shopping, have lunch with some hospital friends, and always be home by 5 p.m. when I got back. But now something wasn't adding up. I went to my home office and opened my diary. Flipping through the pages, I noticed a pattern. Every Thursday for the past 7 weeks, Emily had come home with some excuse, a headache, exhaustion, something, about why we couldn't be intimate. It was usually Saturday or even Sunday before we finally made love. I felt like an idiot for not noticing sooner. Now that I knew, though, I was determined to get the irrefutable proof my attorney had said I'd need. I knocked on the bathroom door and asked if she was okay or if she needed anything. "No, I just need to relax," she said. "Hopefully, this headache will go away soon." She then asked me to take care of Ella for the evening. I agreed and headed back downstairs, my mind already spinning with plans. The nanny had left dinner ready for us, so I took care of feeding Ella, then got her bathed and tucked into bed. With some time to kill, I hopped online and started digging up everything I could about Marcus Williams. By the time the clock hit 11 p.m., I decided to shower and head to bed. Emily was lying there, clearly awake but pretending to be asleep. I let her keep up the act and didn't say a word. Let the cheating woman have her peace, I thought. The next morning, she was up early and out the door for work, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek and the usual, "Have a good day." But I had a plan in motion. At the university, I asked my graduate assistant if he could take over my morning class. He jumped at the chance. Then I came up with a little white lie to borrow his car. With that, I drove up to the lake, parking down the street from the house I had my suspicions about. The place was locked up tight, every window covered with shades, and there were thick drapes behind those shades. It was impossible to see inside, let alone get a photo of whatever I suspected was happening in there every Thursday. I needed a different approach. The thought crossed my mind to wait until they were inside, kick in the door, and snap some incriminating pictures. But I quickly shook that off. Marcus lived in a violent world, and I didn't stand a chance against someone like him. At 5'10" and maybe 180 pounds, I've never been in a fight in my life. This guy could kill me with his bare hands and probably wouldn't face any consequences. If anything, I'd end up charged with home invasion, if I even survived. As I walked back to the car, I thought I saw someone peeking out of a window in the house next door, but I couldn't be sure. Driving back, my mind kept circling back to what I'd read about Marcus the night before. He was married. Maybe I could reach out to his wife for help. Back at the university, Emily called. She said she'd be working a double shift and wouldn't be home until midnight. Predictably, she added that she'd be too tired for any intimacy when she got back. After getting Ella settled for the night, I dove into some research on Marcus's wife. Her social media was packed with pictures, her and Marcus smiling, looking like the perfect couple. She was gorgeous, with long red hair, piercing green eyes, and a figure that could stop traffic. Apparently, she'd been a cheerleader in high school and again at the university where Marcus played football. That's where they tied the knot 5 years ago. They didn't have any kids, but as I scrolled through her posts, I couldn't help but wonder what she had majored in at college. Her writing style was rough, like she'd grown up in a tough neighborhood. I guessed she'd used her looks, and maybe her charm, to get through school. The following Monday, I borrowed my grad assistant's car again and parked outside Marcus's house. Nothing happened. Neither Marcus nor his wife left before I had to head back for my afternoon class. By Thursday, another plan started to form. That morning, I parked near Marcus's house again and waited. A little later, I saw him leave, presumably heading to the lake. After giving him a couple of minutes, I started to get out of the car. But before I could move, his wife came flying out of the driveway. I scrambled back into the car and decided to follow her. She didn't go far, pulling into a Starbucks parking lot. I waited a moment, then followed her inside. She was sitting at a table, sipping what looked like one of those overpriced coffee drinks with ice cream on top. I didn't bother ordering anything. Instead, I walked straight over to her table. She looked up at me, her expression immediately hostile. "Who the hell are you?" she snapped. The man whose wife is sleeping with your husband, probably right now, I replied calmly. She motioned for me to sit, her long fake nails clicking as she tapped the table. She didn't say anything, just stared at me, so I started talking. Every Thursday for the past 2 months, they've been meeting up at the lake. She's a nurse, and they met when he was a patient at the hospital, I explained. Blonde with big breasts, she asked bluntly. I resisted the urge to sink to her level. Yes, I replied simply. I noticed the way he looked at her one night, she said, her tone icy. And you're telling me this happens every Thursday? Yes, I confirmed. He tells you he's going to a team meeting, doesn't he? She nodded, her jaw tightening. You say they're up there right now? Until about 3 p.m., I said. She stood abruptly. I'm going to surprise them. Amber, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I need proof for my divorce lawyer. Could you get me a photo? She shot me a look, her green eyes blazing. I'll get you more than a photo. I'll get you a damn video, she said before storming out the door. I thought that went better than expected. Amber would catch them in the act, likely record a video on her phone, and, knowing her, she'd probably send it to half her contact list. Who knows, it might even end up on ESPN. I'd have the proof I needed and a way out of my marriage to Emily. Feeling oddly relieved, I headed back to campus and grabbed lunch in the cafeteria. Everything seemed fine until halfway through my afternoon class, when there was a knock at the door. My grad assistant opened it and then motioned me over. Standing there were the dean of the business school and 2 men I didn't recognize. Dr. Evans? One of them asked as I walked closer. Yes, that's me, I replied. I'm Sergeant Detective Sam Friday, and this is my partner, Ryan Morgan, he said, gesturing to the other man. We need to speak with you. Can we step into your office? I nodded, telling my grad assistant to finish the class, and led the detectives down the hall. As we walked, Friday asked, what kind of name is Nevada? Were you born out west? No, I said, and I used the English pronunciation, Nevada. I was actually born during a snowstorm. Morgan just nodded, clearly uninterested in the small talk. Once we were in my office, I offered them seats. Friday spoke first. I'm sorry, Dr. Evans, but there's no easy way to say this. Your wife was killed this morning. My stomach dropped. Oh my God. Was there another mall shooting? Friday raised an eyebrow. Why would you think that? I swallowed hard. It's her day off, what she calls her me day. She told me she was going to the mall and then having lunch with her friends from the hospital. Friday exchanged a look with Morgan. She wasn't at the mall, he said. She was at a house up by the lake. We believe she was involved with Marcus Williams. Do you know him? I nodded slowly. I know of him. He was a patient at the hospital where Emily works, but I never met him. Friday's tone hardened. His wife caught them in bed together. She killed them both. What? How? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Amber walked in with a shotgun, he explained. Your wife took the first shot, a blast to the face. It nearly decapitated her. Marcus tried to escape, but she hit him in the leg before he could get to his gun. He managed to fire off 2 shots, killing her instantly, but he bled out before the ambulance arrived. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was hearing. Why? I managed to ask. Morgan, leaning against the doorframe, decided to add his 2 cents. Probably had something to do with the size of his equipment. I've seen horses. Ryan, wait in the hall, Friday snapped. Morgan hesitated, then turned to leave. Sorry for your loss, he muttered before stepping out. Friday sighed, clearly irritated. I apologize for that. He's new. He paused, then continued. Anyway, Marcus's wife caught them red-handed and snapped. It's as simple as that. We'll need you to stick to your story that you had no idea about the affair. I didn't, I said truthfully. Friday handed me a business card. Here's my contact information. The number for the morgue is on the back. There'll be an autopsy, but the body should be available by Monday. I'm sorry about all this. Sometimes, though, good things come from bad situations. With that, he got up and left. Moments later, Lily burst into my office, locking the door behind her. Wipe that smirk off your face, she hissed. Uncle Sam knows the truth. He found a Starbucks receipt in Emily's car and checked the security cameras. He saw you talking to Amber this morning. But don't worry, he's been through something similar with his first wife. Just play the grieving husband who's devastated by his wife's death. She crossed her arms and softened her tone. You need to get home and take care of Ella. Hand me that card with the morgue's number, I'll handle arranging the funeral. Cremation okay? I nodded. Yes. Good. Now go splash some water on your face and don't dry it off. You need to look upset, she said firmly. I handed her the card and walked into the bathroom. Standing there, staring at my wet face in the mirror, I started to cry. I didn't want Emily dead. For all her faults, she was still Ella's mother. All I'd wanted was a divorce from my cheating wife, not this chaos. What was going to happen now? I'd lied to the police. The weight of it all hit me like a freight train. Uncle Sam. I rushed back into my office. Uncle Sam. I asked Lily. My mother's brother, she replied casually. My dad was his partner until he retired last year. Don't worry about him, I'll talk to him. He'll understand. I grabbed my briefcase and walked out into the hall, trying to keep it together. Before I could make it to the parking lot, a couple of my supervisors approached to offer their condolences. I thanked them as politely as I could, then finally got to my car and drove home. There's no easy way to tell a child their mother has been killed, and given the circumstances, I decided to keep it simple. I told Ella that a very bad person had hurt her mom. Nothing more. She cried, and I held her tightly. I cried too, not for Emily, but for Ella. Seeing her so heartbroken tore me up inside. Eventually, I managed to get her to sleep. Afterward, I took a long shower, trying to piece everything together. Lily had stepped in and taken control of the situation, and I'd let her. Why? Maybe because I was too overwhelmed to think clearly. Sometime after midnight, Ella climbed into bed with me. I held her close as she cried herself to sleep. Her tiny body shaking against mine broke my heart all over again. The next morning, I got up early and started making pancakes, Ella's favorite breakfast. While I was flipping them on the griddle, the doorbell rang. Standing there were Lily and a beautiful young woman I hadn't met before. Looking past them, I saw Emily's car in the driveway. Uncle Sam gave me the keys, Lily said. We figured we'd drive it over this morning. How's Ella doing? About as well as can be expected, I replied, stepping aside to let them in. As they walked in, the other woman sniffed the air. I smell pancakes, she said brightly, then noticed Ella. Squatting down to her level, she introduced herself. My name's Claire, and that's Lily over there. We're friends of your daddy. Ella's eyes welled up with tears. Somebody killed my mama, she said softly before breaking down. Without hesitation, Claire scooped her up, holding her close. I know, baby, I know, she murmured, patting Ella's back and whispering soothing words. Claire carried her down the hall, still comforting her. Lily nodded toward them. Claire's great with kids. She'll take care of her. Then she turned to me. Now, let's finish those pancakes. We didn't eat breakfast, and I'm starving. As I continued cooking, Lily set the table and filled me in. Uncle Sam already closed the case. He said not to talk to the press and to stick to your story, say you didn't know anything about the affair. Claire and Ella eventually came back into the kitchen, Ella now dressed in a cute little outfit. She seemed calmer. While Ella ate her pancakes, she told me how Claire was going to help her go through all the pictures of her mom to pick some for the funeral. I glanced at Claire, and she gave me a playful wink. Then we're going shopping for a new dress for the funeral, Claire said, smiling at Ella. I have to look pretty for Mama, Ella added, with another wink from Claire. She's good with kids, Lily repeated, smiling. For the next couple of hours, Claire and Ella combed through every photo we had of Emily. They selected a beautiful headshot to enlarge and place beside the urn. Then they picked 5 more pictures to frame and display on a table. They chose images from happier times, one of Ella as a newborn, another of the 3 of us at the beach, and one of just Emily and Ella together. That last one was Ella's favorite. By the time they finished, it was lunchtime. Ella suggested Mickey D's, and we all agreed it was a great idea. At the restaurant, Ella played on the swing set while Claire joined her, laughing and pushing her higher. Lily and I sat by the window, watching them. Without thinking, I muttered, Claire would make a great mother for Ella. As soon as the words were out of my mouth, I realized what I'd said and turned to Lily, ready to apologize. I didn't mean, I started, but Lily interrupted, gently taking my hand. I don't mind sharing, she said with a small smile. And I suppose, by now, you can guess how this story ends. Lily took charge of all the funeral arrangements, ensuring everything was handled smoothly. Emily was cremated, and at the service, I handed her ashes to her father, Dr. Blake. Before he left, I reminded him that Ella was his only granddaughter and that he was welcome to see her anytime he wanted. None of this was his fault. His daughter's lies and infidelity were on her, not him. It had taken me 4 years to catch her, but I didn't hold any resentment toward him. Life moved forward. Claire became an amazing mother, not just to Ella, but to the 2 children we later had together. She was warm, nurturing, and always knew how to bring out the best in everyone around her. As for Lily, she stayed in our lives for almost 3 years before deciding to move on. Even now, she drops by every so often to visit. All the kids call her Aunt Lily, and she wears the title proudly. She and Claire sometimes go out for long lunches, catching up and sharing stories. And me? I don't mind sharing, at least not with Lily.